Hello, my name is Kenya Wallach, and today we're going to talk a little bit about educational data mining. School systems must have a clear and concise understanding of what their mission is. Your mission statement actually drives what you are going to be doing from day to day. Now, over the years, we've gained more and more access to more and more data, and we have more knowledge about this data than we've ever had in human history. And that's just not in the area of education. That's in every aspect of our lives, whether it is analyzing the data that we're receiving from space, or it's analyzing market data, market shares, and things of that nature, or if it is simply to monitor the progress of the growth of your child. So we've had a lot of access to data. The thing that we have to learn to do with data is be able to understand how we can harness the power of that data. Now, in terms of a school system, we have to really face the brutal facts when it comes to our data, when it comes to what it is that we need to improve. And then we have to take action when it comes to looking at that data so that we can improve teaching and learning for all students. The problem comes in with when we have tons and tons of data and these huge spreadsheets strewn about the entire school. We have to learn how to be able to bring it all together in one very easy format. The objectives for today is to really talk about what is educational data mining and how can we apply it, as well as some questions that data mining can answer and what kind of data may be needed to answer those questions. So first, what is educational data mining? Educational data mining is an emerging discipline concerned with concerned with developing with concerned with developing methods for exploring the unique types of data that come from educational settings and use those methods to better understand students and the environment in which they learn. Keys to educational data mining. There's levels to understanding educational data mining. There's levels and there's also understandings that are nested within one another. Some of those different levels or some of those different nests is understanding keystroke level. That's when you actually are taking data on exactly what keys the student is typing when they're typing into a computer. That's typically utilized when you're talking about an educational program. Answer level. That's something that teachers can do, schools can do, is take a look at the answer choices that students are making and analyze those different pieces on an individual basis. Session level. That's a session level or a class level or a unit level. That's understanding how students are performing on individual sessions or classes and things of that nature to make sure that students have a firm understanding of different segments of a particular curriculum. Student level, and that's how are the students actually being able to understand that information and what information they're able to perform out. That's not always on a multiple choice test, that also comes in the form of written and oral communication. Classroom level, that's taking a look at all of those different pieces and bundling it into individual classes. Same thing with student level, because you can bundle all that information that the student is bringing to you in for that particular student in terms of their test data, their oral performance data. All of those different pieces come together on the student level, and then when you take a look at your entire class of 30 kids, taking all of that data in that individual class. Teacher level, all 120 students that that teacher has in the course of a year, taking a look at that data, seeing about trends that the teacher has had over the course of several years. And then school level is taking all the teachers in your building and all of those multiple years of experience that those teachers have and analyzing that data on a larger scale. More information can be harnessed by taking a look at in terms of time, sequence, and context. That's what we were talking about a little bit before in terms of the different levels, but now taking those levels and putting them into a particular time frame, a sequence, and also bringing context to it. Because without context, you can really not have a firm understanding of what's going on with that data. So what you have to understand is you have to understand where your data is housed, being able to understand where it's located, and being able to bundle it and process it appropriately so that you can gain knowledge about what it is that you need to do to enhance teaching and learning. And you always have to ask yourself, do you have access to all of your bundles? Because when you're taking a look at your bundles of data that are housed inside of these barrels of data, you have to understand that there are going to be some data pieces that you are not going to have access to at all times because you do not have access to the anecdotal notes that teachers keep on their students unless you have a computer program, a student information system that allows for that input in. And is that data that you really want to have when it comes to making decisions about student placement and things of that nature? Data is the new soil. So when we take a look at our new soil, our data, it's been irrigated with networks and tilled with accountability systems and hopefully harvested by teachers and administrators. Now, when we've done those things, we have great student achievement growth. When we do not do those things, meaning we do not irrigate our soil with the networks that are needed, and we do not have proper accountability systems, and when this data is not harvested by the teachers and administrators, then we do not have student achievement. Now, when we take a look at data, we have to have context. So again, taking a look at this data that we have here, you can take a look at that data and you can come up with some conclusions about it just by looking at it, because you can see it starts in January and it goes to December. That's a calendar year. We have some ups and downs, so you can make some predictions about what this data could be talking about. Because you can see here we have rises between February and March. We have rises before December, but falls end of December. It could have something to do with shopping. It could have something to do with a whole host of things. You don't know until context is brought to fruition here. And you can see this is not shopping, it's peaks of breakup times. Because again, if you don't have context, you can draw the wrong conclusions about your data. Visualization of data. Design is about solving problems and finding eloquent solutions. Information design is about solving information problems from data overload to lack of transparency. Data should either reinforce your point of view or change it. What is not data mining? What is not data mining is, for a school system, it's looking up names of tardy students. Conduct a query in your student information system for information about the percentage of African American students and Hispanic students. That's not really data mining. What is data mining is taking a look at the tardies. Tardies are more prevalent during a certain period, first period and before and after lunch. Conduct a query in your student information system for names of students who are African American or Hispanic. Cross check those names of students who fail an SOL test, then link it to teachers. Getting that information, and the reason why I have here focused on Hispanic and African American students is because for this particular school that I'm taking a look at, it's a school that has low SOL scores for um, Hispanic and African American students. And so you want to really try to dig deep to try to figure out, well, what's happening with these students. And one of the things that you have noticed that you have had an increase in tardies during this period, and you want to see, is there any correlation between the two, and how can you help prevent the tardies that are occurring in the classrooms where their low SOL scores are occurring. And again, when you're talking about educational data mining, you're talking about doing something that is purposeful. What you have here is the Commonwealth of Virginia divided up into its individual counties. Inside of each county, you will have either one or multiple dots. Those dots represent the school districts that are found within the Commonwealth of Virginia. The dots are actually color coded. It's difficult to see unless we zoom in. So we're going to zoom in for a moment here. All right. So as you can see, we have some different color dots. We have a red dot, a gray dot, so we have a number of gray dots, a red dot, a green dot, and so forth. And so you can see these dots here. These dots range in color from red to green, with the lowest score being 55%, with the highest being 100%, and they're going up in intervals of about 5. And what these dots represent are the math SOL scores for each individual school district. So is there summative state assessment score for mathematics, and it's only looking at the all student category, because when we look at our data, we look at it by all, and then we have it divided up into different subgroups. This right now is just really taking a look at the all category across the Commonwealth of Virginia. And so let's back out of it so we can get a full look at the Commonwealth. Now, as you can see, the numbers here that are, some are very large and some are small, that's designed to draw your eye to a particular number, either it being extremely small or it being extremely large. Typically, your eye will be drawn to something that's very large. So what does that mean when you have a large number? The way that I have this visualization designed is designed to give you the large number, which is um, your all student average pass rate for that individual school district. And so when it's very large, that 75 that's sticking out to me right here, that large number is telling me that the standard deviation over a course of 3 years is extremely high. The smaller the number, the smaller the SOL number, or standard of learning number, for this particular visualization, the smaller it is, that means the smaller the standard deviation is. So let's take a look at this 75. So this 75, once I put my cursor over that 75, and I'm going to click it so it isolates just that one area, it tells me the school district that this 75 is found within. It tells me the 3 years of all student average SOL scores for mathematics. We see we have a 58, an 86, and a 75. So that tells you that there's been a lot of transition within that particular school district as a collective whole. It also has it broken down into additional subgroups that I've identified. The black student average SOL score for mathematics in 2015-16, there's nothing there. The reason why is because it's a null character. There's not enough data to support providing that information. When the number of students within that particular subgroup falls below 30, then we do not report that average score. For economically disadvantaged students in 2015-16, it was a 71. Hispanic students, that was below 30 students reporting. The standard deviation for 2013 through 2016 was 11.52. Now that number is large when we take a look at the standard deviation over those 3 years. It ranges from about a little over a zero point 0.5 all the way to around a 12. And so this is on the upper end of the spectrum when we're taking a look at our standard deviation over a 3-year period. And then our students with disabilities in 2015-16 was at a 40% for this particular school district. So by clicking or taking my cursor over that particular 75, I'm able to find out additional information. So that is one of the visualizations that we have. So let's take a look at another visualization that I've created here. This one is actually taking a look at the students with disabilities SOL scores for mathematics and comparing it to the all students scores in mathematics for 2015-16. So what I've done here is I've taken the scores and I have for students with disabilities, and I've given them color. So with the lowest score being in the 20s and the highest score being in the 70s here, you are able to identify exactly what box you want to go to, because the darker the red, the lower the score is. Now the size of the box gives you information as well. and the size tells you the score, the all student score. So giving you that comparison. So the larger the box, the higher the all student category is. So let's take a look at one of the high scores. So let's take a look at Roanoke County. So as you can see here, when I click on this particular county or this particular box, it gives me the county's name. The pass rate all students in 2015-16 was about an 89% pass rate. So that's the reason why the box is the size that it is as comparison to a smaller box. Now we can take a look at our students with disabilities category. It's at a 65. And when we're taking a look at that spectrum between a 20 and a 75, that is on the higher end of the spectrum. It's on the higher end when we're taking a look at all of the school districts, students with disabilities average scores on the Math SOL test for 2015-16. That's on the higher end. However, when we're taking a look at it in terms of the all students, we can easily see that there is a discrepancy there. But again, what you want to do with the data is kind of gather it all in together and kind of be able to see what's happening with your scores. Um, Also, by having the the detailed report that I have here, it's providing me also with additional information. For example, I'm able to take a look at the standard deviation over the past 3 years for the all categories, so we can see that there has not been a lot of change in those scores. So it's really closely aligned to the median. And so the mean score for those 3 years. So there's not a lot of outliers there. And you can also take a look at that 65 for students with disabilities and really do a comparison, visual comparison for other subgroups that we have listed here. So now let's take a look at a box that's darker and of a different size. So we're going to move over to this box right here. So this box is for King and Queen County. And that's one of our school districts in the Commonwealth of Virginia. And you can see that, let me get back here. You can see that the students with disabilities is math pass rate for 2015-16 was about at a 30%. So that's why the hue of the box is darker. And then the size of that box is different than the prior box we were looking at, because that all student category is at a lower is actually lower. So it's at a 75%, which is very different than the other school district we were taking a look at before. So that gives you, by taking a look at it this way, you can get a nice overarching look at all the school districts that we have in Virginia, and be able to easily identify which school districts maybe you want to target for intervention purposes, for sales, or for as for the state of Virginia, to be able to provide them with additional supports and initiatives to increase their pass rate for students with disabilities. Another data visualization that I created was a comparison of standard deviation of all students from 2013 to 2016 for math. So this gives you that standard deviation that I was talking about before, and take a look at all of the school districts to see at a glance where the school districts are falling in terms of their standard deviation over the 3 years for the all students. And you can see you have some school districts that have a huge discrepancy between theirs versus some other schools that will have a much smaller, like this one is not even, it hasn't even made it to a 1 yet. So you can kind of see which school districts will have that you may want to have a little bit more investigation into. The reason why I say more investigation is because this school district like this, that's at 10.66 when it comes to their standard deviation, that means there was a huge jump in terms of their scores. So they had one score that was high and one score and some scores that was really low, and so you want to be able to dig a little bit deeper into those scores to figure out exactly where did things go wrong, what year did they go wrong, are they on an uptrend, are they on a downtrend. Those are different pieces of information that you want to be able to find out, and exactly, and was it a particular grade level? Was it something that occurred in middle school versus a change that happened in high school that caused that dramatic shift in their scores? Another visualization that I created was comparing the standard deviation over the 2013-2016 year, and comparing that to all students for 2015-16 in mathematics. So as you can see here, I have the standard deviation here at the bottom, and when I took a look at the data for standard deviation, what I found was that um, the median for standard deviation was at a 3. So right around here. So if I were to draw a line coming straight up here, and then I also took a look at, created a histogram for all students for 2015 pass rates, and their median pass rate was about a 76. So if I were to draw a line going across here, that would divide up this chart into 4 different quadrants, and that will let us know some information about the schools. One of the things is that let's take a look at a school that has a low standard deviation but has a high score for the 2015-16 academic year. So this school here, so this is what I call high performing consistent or predictable. So this is a school that is in the upper left-hand quadrant of what I've just drawn imaginarily there, and that tells me that these school districts that are in this area, they are consistently strong. And as you can see here with this particular school, it's been in the 90s for the last 3 years. Standard deviation is a 1.25, so that is a school district that is pretty solid. That's a school district that I may want to take a deeper look at in terms of trying to figure out what are they doing in that school district to maintain a high score for the past 3 years. I also may want to take a look at it and expand it from a 3-year period to a 5-year period, just so that I can see if there's really consistency there, because you really want to take a look at 5 years versus 3 years to really see what's going on. So that's one of the quadrants that I like to take a look at. The next quadrant is a low standard deviation and a low score. These are the schools that really are in desperate need of assistance, and because these are schools who have been consistently, predictably low performing for the past 3 years or so. And so falling below that 76 mark, you can see this school district right here is in the 60s consistently and has a standard deviation of a 0.94. So these are the school districts. If I was a vendor looking for school districts to really sell my product to, my intervention products to, I would go to school districts that fall into this category here. Also, I have another quadrant, and that quadrant is in the high standard deviation and also high performing. Because if you remember before, I had talked a little bit about, well, and on the chart that we had in the very beginning of the Commonwealth of Virginia, I talked about the standard deviation kind of varying, and if you have a high standard deviation, that we don't know exactly where that anomaly occurred of a low or high score. By taking a look at a chart similar to this, my focus is on the last assessment that was given, which is the 2015-16 assessment. And so when I take a look at that in terms of it being a high year, then I know that I can say, okay, these schools are making progress. Looking at that standard deviation being high, but the current score being high as well. So that's what that's telling me here. And when I take a look at this particular school, I can see in 2013-14 they had a 69, 2014-15 they had a 76, and 2015-16 they have an 86. So those are school districts that we want to talk to about, well, what did you do in order to get these leaps in your scores for each year? So that's what that quadrant is telling me, that quadrant in the upper right hand side. Now the ones in the lower right hand side, those are telling me that we have a high standard deviation, so that means we've had some high scores and some low scores. So that means we do not have consistency or predictability, and it did not occur, that high score did not occur in the current year. So that means that typically they're on a downward trend. So those are the ones we really want to take a look at as well to find out what's going on and why those scores are going in that direction. So this one is a going from a 48 to a 29 to a 30. But then we take a look at this particular grouping. This school is the Virginia School of the Deaf and Blind. And so this is a very small population of students with very high needs in terms of their to overcome some of the disabilities that they do have. So let's take a look at another school. So for this particular school, I went from a 49 to a 54 to a 69. So that still had an upward swing, but it's still a huge, huge shift in the numbers. And the same thing here. So we can see we pretty much have a number of schools that are really on the upward bounce when it comes to their scores. Um, Yeah, we have some really good upward bounce. This is really the only one that's in this extreme low area here. But again, these are still schools that we want to take a look at because their scores are not really where we want them to be either. And they're not consistent because again, what our goal is to make sure that our schools have a consistently high performing. And we do have a number of schools that are in that area for the Commonwealth of Virginia. So some of the last report that I have here that I've created was an overview of all the school systems in the Commonwealth of Virginia, and just doing a quick overview of their scores over the course of the 3-year period and looking at all the subgroups. And what this is really information that this is providing me is a quick glance, like if I wanted to just simply see a particular school, I can go to that one school and kind of take a close look, deeper dive into what's going on. So having all of these in one file is very important, very good for me to be able to have, especially if you're trying to analyze your data very quickly. You also are able to see if you have some stagnant areas going on. So let's take a look here at this particular school when it comes to the black population of students and their scores for mathematics. So we have for 2013 through 2016, you can see their scores have been consistently low for this particular school system. But then when we take a look at um, the all category, they've been consistently high. When we now break that down to our female population, those are consistently high. So we see that they have consistent numbers going across, and they're not making much progress in any one category. So that tells me that that particular school system may need to infuse something different into their curriculum. They need to have something that's going to really ignite the excitement of mathematics in some of the populations that they have here that are the minority populations, and maybe take a look at some of the differentiated instruction techniques, and also looking at um, possible biases within their curriculum and within teaching styles. Because when you have consistent low scores for certain populations of students, that always brings up a red flag in terms of there may be some additional things that need to be taken a look at and investigated further in terms of how you can make your school system, your curriculum, and your teaching styles more inclusive so that all students feel engaged in their learning process and feel engaged in the classroom as a whole. So this is one way to take a look at educational data. Some of the things that you can do with it is you can do so many different things with it, but I hope that you've enjoyed taking a look at the Commonwealth of Virginia's math SOL scores and have some thoughts to share. Thank you. So now that was a quick overview of educational data mining. So when we're thinking about our mining of our data, we want to make sure that we begin with the end in mind. And this is what I make sure that I tell the school districts that I work with, is that data-driven improvement, you have to have your priorities in line. So you need to have your target set, and then at that point, once you have your target set, then you create your assessments. Take a look at the data from the assessments, those results, and then that gives you a loop into your feedback. Feedback is in the form of feedback to the students in terms of how well that they did on those assessments, feedback in terms of the teachers receiving feedback on how their class performed and how their colleagues performed, and then taking a look at the strategies that was utilized to receive those types of results. Whether they were good, bad, or indifferent, we will have to take a look at the strategies that were utilized and the materials that were utilized in order to have those results, because that's when you start to tweak things to be able to understand what you need to tweak and what you need to keep the same, and then you execute that corrections, and what we call that is corrective instruction. So we reteach that, but not simply reteaching it in the same exact way that it was done before, but we reteach it in terms of correcting the misconceptions that were discovered by the assessment that the students had taken, and providing effective feedback to those students, then providing additional, then reteaching it, giving that corrective instruction in a way that targets those gaps in understanding. So here are just a kind of overview of what that feedback loop looks like and how to implement the data, and changing those strategies in order to fully understand and fully take advantage of your data, because it's very important to maximize the usage of your data. And I'm sure you've heard me say, start with the end in mind a number of times here. So let's talk about exactly what that is. Starting with the end in mind is examine, notice, and diagnose. Step one is to start with a question. This influences what data you are going to pull. That is your target. Like, what is your target? What are you looking for? What are you trying to examine? So number two is examine the data for the trends and the outliers, because you want to take a look at that data that you've pulled, and you want to be able to see what is this data telling you, because your data will always speak to you. Step three, notice what the data is saying. Where are the trends and the outliers, positive, negative, or no real change at all? So that is extremely important, because a lot of times people want to not think about what the data is actually saying, because they want to bring in other information that's not a part of the data that was pulled. When you're looking at your data and you're examining your data, you have to look at not your personal opinions about the teacher or your personal opinions about the students, but you have to allow the data to speak for itself. And that's what number three is really all about, is really taking the personal out of it and really focusing on exactly what that data is saying. Step four is diagnose. Diagnose why the data is saying it. Why is it providing you that type of data? And ask more questions if needed. So when we looked at the data regarding one of the schools that had a stagnant improvement, didn't have really much improvement over the past 3 years, was very had low performance in minority groups, but very consistent low performance, not a lot of variation in terms of the scores. That data doesn't give you the solution to anything. It simply begs to ask more questions and to dig deeper. That's what we're talking about in terms of step four. Not Your data will not always give you the exact answer. It's a lot of times it will give you the opportunity to ask more questions and dig deeper and go and find out more information about that particular topic. Research is always key. We want to make sure that we research things, and we always try to make sure that we grow the capacity of ourselves and the people around us through functions of what's called professional learning communities. Um, Direct involvement is is extremely critical for our teachers to be able to grow and to thrive in our school districts, and understanding that this profession is something that creates lifelong learners, and you have to be a lifelong learner in order to be a part of it. And one of the reasons why it's so important for us to dig deeper into our data and make sure that we are changing our instruction and our methodology so that we can reach all students is because only about 7% of low income students will earn a college degree. And that is a frightening number. As we increase the number of students who are falling in that low income category, and we're not increasing the number of students that are earning a college degree, that have the potential to really have those types of degrees. So it's very critical for us to really take advantage of our data so that we can ensure that students who have the capability of earning that college degree and would like to earn the college degree actually have the means to do so, the knowledge base to do so. Um, 5 years of effective teaching can completely close the gap between low income students and others. That is mind blowing when you think about it. 5 years. However, on the flip side, it only really takes 2 to 3 consecutive years of ineffective teaching to create a huge disparity between students, regardless of their being low income or not. So we want to make sure that our teachers are performing at the top of their game when they're instructing our students. Because again, it takes 5 years to close the achievement gap between low income students and others, but it only takes 2 to 3 years to create an achievement gap. This part is not research, but I like it. And it's something that I've created. It's called the 100 percenters. Improvement is needed if your school does not have 100% of teachers using best practices 100% of the time to reach 100% of the students. Children deserve our best 100% of the time. We must work towards 100% in all that we do when we are instructing our students and when we are creating educational environments for our students and also educational products for our students. So, going back to where we were in the beginning, what is the mission of school? The mission of school is to academically and socially grow students. And you can do that effectively through educational data mining. Have a great day.